Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. A millionaire stops in front of a beggar and says to her, "You are my mother." San Francisco. A city of contrasts, of dazzling paradoxes, where dreams are born at the same pace as illusions crumble. The rolling hills, the nostalgic trams, the flamboyant startups, everything here exudes ascent, innovation, and speed. The glass skyscrapers reflect a sky often too blue to be honest, as if trying to hide the city's scars. Just a few blocks from the headquarters of tech giants, you can buy a $10 coffee, rent an electric bike with a futuristic app, or reserve a self-driving car with a click. But under this shining window, San Francisco hides another reality, darker, harsher. The one forgotten. The one that tourists avoid photographing. Between the slender buildings and the cafes with green walls, nameless beings sleep on the asphalt, wrapped in blankets soaked by the mist, plastic bags tied around their wrists to keep their few possessions. They stand there, silent, motionless, as if absorbed by the concrete. People walk past them without a glance, like rusty poles or urban waste. Women, men, sometimes very young, sometimes very old, but always marked by indifference, fatigue, and shame. It is in this universe of silence and oblivion that one finds oneself. Martha Williams, 68 years old. She didn't get here overnight. The streets, for her, were a gradual, painful, and invisible descent. First, a makeshift room in a shelter, then a tent shared with two other women, and finally the sidewalk, cold, rough, and indifferent. She no longer has any papers, no family, or so she thinks, and she hasn't spoken her name aloud for a long time. Every morning, she sets up in the same place, in front of a supermarket in the district of Tenderloin, one of the poorest and most affected by the social crisis. Her body, bent by the years and the weather, is protected by a perforated blanket that she meticulously folds like a relic. Her face, hollowed by the salty wind and dried tears, nevertheless retains a strange sweetness, a hidden radiance, as if a thread of ancient light still remained within her. She reaches out to passers-by, but without conviction. She doesn't talk much anymore. She doesn't expect anything anymore. The few coins she gets are stored in a rusty candy box. She no longer counts the days. Only the cold that creeps into her bones reminds her that time is passing. The faces around her change, but the contempt remains the same. She learned to be forgotten. To breathe gently. Not to disturb. But on that day, as the sky began to turn orange and the air grew heavier, something strange is floating in the atmosphere. She couldn't explain it, but a feeling tightened in her chest. A different beat in the world. A sensation almost forgotten, like a presence. That day, as she lowers her head to avoid another contemptuous look, a car stops. Not just any car. A shiny black Bentley with tinted windows. She doesn't move. She's seen rich people walk past her 1,000 times without stopping. But this time, the engine turns off. The door opens. Calm steps. Heavy. Determined. And a voice. A voice that makes the ground tremble beneath it. That day, an unexpected miracle awaits him. A miracle she no longer dared to dream of. 38 years earlier, Martha Williams lived in a small apartment on the second floor of a rundown building in the working-class district of Bayview-Hunters Point, in San Francisco. The walls were paper-thin, the hot water unreliable, the floors creaked with every step, but it was a home. The only one she could offer her 5-year-old son Ezekiel, his only reason for living. The father, Robert Williams, had long since disappeared. A brilliant, attractive man, but cold as steel. Ambitious to the point of sacrificing anything that didn't directly serve his purposes. He worked in politics, aspiring to a career in the Senate. Martha, on the other hand, was merely a chapter he wanted to erase from his official biography. From the moment Ezekiel was born, Robert began to withdraw. He said the child cried too much, couldn't concentrate, and his career was suffering. One night, he simply didn't come home. And the next day, all his belongings were gone. All that remained was a cold letter, left on the kitchen table, in which he declared that he could not continue this life of mediocrity. Martha had never sued him, she had too much pride. Too much pride. And above all, too much love for Ezekiel to waste herself in a pointless war. She had chosen to do what she had always known how to do, fight alone. Every morning, she rose at dawn to clean offices in the financial district. Then, in the afternoon, she worked in a family laundry. She rushed from one job to the next, her back bent, her hands damaged by detergents, but the heart swollen with love every time she opened the door and found Ezekiel waiting for her behind the window, a book in his hands. In the evening, after a frugal dinner, often buttered pasta or rice with beans, she read him stories. Stories of brave children, of distant kingdoms, of heroes who had risen from poverty. He loved it. He often fell asleep against her, the book still open, his little fist closed around a page he didn't want to turn yet. Martha saved everything she could. Every penny of tip, every extra bill slipped into an envelope. Not for herself. For his. To buy him notebooks, colored pencils, a dictionary. She dreamed of one day enrolling him in a private school. She had never been able to go to high school, but Ezekiel was different. "You will be a free man, my love," she said to him as she tucked him in. "You won't need to bow down to anyone. You will be strong, kind, and educated." She raised him with tenderness and rigor. He never missed a homework assignment. She encouraged him to ask questions, to think, to speak with respect. Despite their poverty, their little world was filled with hope, intelligence, and a dignity that nothing seemed able to shatter. But the destiny, that word she had always refused to fear, struck her mercilessly. One day, after several weeks of overwork and ignored pain, Martha collapsed in the laundry. She was rushed to the hospital. Extreme exhaustion, severe deficiency, dangerously low blood pressure. She spent 3 days in a hospital bed, unconscious for part of the time, unable to contact anyone. During this time, Robert Williams, who had become a very influential political advisor, learned of his ex-wife's hospitalization from an acquaintance. He saw this as an unexpected opportunity. With his network of lawyers and his new wealthy wife at his side, he immediately called in social services. He argued that the child was living in unsanitary conditions. He cited Martha's hospitalization as evidence of her instability. And most importantly, used his political connections to speed up the procedure. On the third day, just as Martha had just opened her eyes, a social services worker entered her room, his gaze compassionate but firm. "Ms. Williams, your son Ezekiel has been placed in foster care. For his own good." The world collapsed. She screamed. She begged. She demanded an audience, a lawyer, a visit. Nothing. Robert had everything locked up. He publicly stated in a carefully prepared television interview that he was deeply concerned about his ex-wife's mental health, and that he now assumed sole responsibility for their son, whom he placed with a family capable of offering him a decent future. The media applauded him for his fatherly responsibility. Martha, for her part, was silenced. Every request for contact with Ezekiel was denied. She tried writing, searching, knocking on doors, but in vain. After a year, she didn't even know where he lived. Letters came back with the note, "Recipient not found." His heart slowly died out. She wandered from shelter to shelter, unable to rebuild her life without him. And in this society that does not forgive poor mothers for having failed even once, she gradually disappeared into the shadows. She was no more than Martha, a tired woman in the street, whom no one called by her full name anymore. After its placement, Ezekiel Williams lost all connection with his mother, all sense of direction, all emotional stability. He first spent a few months in a temporary reception center, before being officially adopted by a wealthy Californian couple, the Carter, a cultured and caring home based in Palo Alto. Jonathan Carter, a Stanford engineering professor, and his wife Grace, a librarian, had no biological children. Their home was filled with books, classical music, soft light, and serene discipline. They welcomed Ezekiel with discreet warmth, without promises, but with consistency. They enrolled him in a progressive private school, gave him a room of his own, new clothes, and a personal computer from the age of 9. More Ezekiel was not a child like the others. He didn't speak much. He rarely smiled. In his eyes, an unusual gravity for his age seemed to have settled, as if a fragment of old pain refused to leave him. The Carters thought at first that time would soften him, but the past had left deep roots. He remembered only fragments of his former life. The smell of laundry detergent. A song hummed on the edge of a bed. Arms wrapped around him. A sad but loving laugh. These memories sometimes returned at night, in the form of hazy dreams where a woman with tired eyes stroked his hair and whispered, "You will be a free man, my heart." He no longer knew if it was a dream or a memory. But he knew that deep down, something, or someone, missed him. And so he immersed himself in what he had mastered: logic, precision, technology. At 8, he was taking radios apart and putting them back together. At 10, he was writing his first computer scripts. At 13, he unwittingly hacked into the school server just to understand how it worked. His teachers called him a mind too far ahead of his time, and a heart in exile. At 16, he entered Stanford, where his adoptive father taught. There he studied artificial intelligence, robotics, and technological ethics. He created algorithms, learning systems, and conversational interfaces. But what he really wanted was, understand human beings. Machines don't lie. They obey what they are given. They don't steal a child from its mother. They do not lie to justice. He said one day in a conference, without anyone grasping the weight of his words. As 25 years old, he threw Carter Tech, in a small shared office south of San Francisco. He worked day and night, pushing the boundaries of AI. He rejected investors who prioritized profit over human dignity. His first significant invention was predictive AI software to detect racial bias in judicial decisions. Then came a machine-assisted social reintegration support system, which won awards in several countries. Sun's ethical approach fascinated the world. His technological genius propelled him to the top. As 30 years old, he was at the head of an empire. 33, his face adorned the pages of Forbes, of The New Yorker, and even of Time magazine, who nicknamed him the silent prodigy. He drove a bulletproof Tesla, lived between an ultra-modern loft in San Francisco, a villa in Malibu overlooking the ocean, and a high-tech chalet in the Big Sur Mountains. He was sometimes seen alongside presidents, sometimes in impoverished schools, distributing laptops to underprivileged children. Journalists described him as an enigmatic man with a heart of gold. No one really knew Ezekiel Carter. Behind the spotlight, the void remained. He avoided big parties. He shied away from personal questions. He had never had any lasting romantic relationships. When people talked about family, he smiled politely and changed the subject. Sometimes, alone in his villa, he would sit at the piano. He would play sad, nameless pieces. He would close his eyes and try to remember the voice, the one that once sang to him a melody he had never been able to find again. He had everything. And yet, he felt like a rich orphan. He hired several private investigators, without telling them the whole truth. He claimed to be looking for old files for a foundation. But they all came back with the same answers: no trace of the Martha Williams he was looking for. Or too many Marthas, too many disappearances, too many forgotten ones. He began making anonymous donations to women's shelters. He funded programs for single mothers. But he didn't know why, exactly. A force within him was searching. Relentlessly. "I was born twice," he would one day confide to his mentor. "Once in pain, and a second in silence. But I have never yet been born into the truth." And this truth, unbeknownst to him, was waiting for him. Not in a confidential file or an investigation report. More on a sidewalk, in front of an anonymous supermarket in the district of Tenderloin, where human dignity seems to have been erased for a long time. This is where his past, his origin, and his mother, were waiting for him. It was a late autumn afternoon, one where the air seems to hold its breath, suspended between the warmth of summer memories and the coming chill of winter. The sky of San Francisco had taken on a golden, almost melancholic hue, caressing the roofs and windows with a soft, fragile glow. Ezekiel Carter, fresh from a meeting with association leaders in a difficult neighborhood, walked along the streets of Tenderloin in the back of his luxury electric car. His impeccable figure, his hard gaze, his calm but tense demeanor, commanded silent respect. His mind, however, was elsewhere. He had just finalized a partnership for a rehabilitation center for homeless women, but despite the enthusiasm of his team, a strange weariness invaded him. While his chauffeur was about to turn right, Ezekiel suddenly put his hand on the headrest of the passenger seat and whispered, "Stop. Excuse me, Mr. Carter. I told you to stop. Now." The car braked gently. To the right of the sidewalk, in front of a rundown supermarket, a woman was sitting cross-legged, wrapped in an old knitted blanket with holes in it. She hardly moved, but her eyes were fixed on him. It was as if the whole world had evaporated around them. There was silence in the tumult, a pause in time in the hustle and bustle of the city. Ezekiel felt sound heart beat faster, for no apparent reason. He was a rational, methodical, unwavering man. But this woman, this look, triggered a dizziness in him that he did not yet understand. He slowly opened the door. Passers-by turned around. Some recognized his face, others were simply surprised to see a man in a three-piece suit approaching a homeless woman. But Ezekiel heard nothing more. He had eyes only for her. He walked slowly, as if each step brought him closer to an abyss. An ancient fear tightened his throat. What if it was just a coincidence? What if he was wrong? He stopped a meter away from her. She looked up. And then, the world ceased to exist. Their eyes met. In the eyes of this emaciated woman, he saw a light he had never seen anywhere else. A painful tenderness, a silent love, a deep, visceral call. His features were marked, his cheeks hollow, his hands trembled, but there was a truth in his face. A truth he knew before even understanding. And then she spoke. A hoarse voice, raspy with age, but one he recognized as if he still heard it in his childhood dreams. "Ezekiel?" He felt his heart explode in his chest. The pounding drowned out everything, the noise from the street, the whispers around him, the clicking of a phone recording. He fell to his knees. Yes. It was she. Mom. She brought both her trembling hands to her mouth. And suddenly, she burst into tears, raw, liberating sobs, the kind you keep silent for a lifetime. "My baby. My baby was stolen from me. I screamed your name for years. They told me you had forgotten me, that you had been taken away from me. They called me crazy." He leaned toward her and took her hand. It was icy, bony, fragile as glass. He squeezed it gently, with a tenderness he didn't think he knew how to give. "Mom. I've been looking for you all my life. I didn't know if you were alive. But I never stopped thinking about you. I would recognize you among 1,000. She looked at him through her tears, as if she were coming back to life. As if, at that moment, she was becoming a mother again. "I waited for you, in every dream, every winter. I knew you would come back. One day." Ezekiel felt his knees hit the hard ground, but he didn't move. He was there, kneeling before his mother, in front of the one who had given him life, who had been torn away from him. Passers-by were filming. Cars were slowing down. But they were alone in the world. He gently rested his forehead against hers. "You don't have to suffer anymore, Mom. It's over. I'm here. Come with me. I'll take you home." She cried again. Then she nodded. Weakly. Like a flower rising despite the rain. He helped her up. She faltered. He carried her. Like a son carries the memory of his childhood, like a man carries what matters most in the world. The back door opened automatically. He carefully placed her inside, still holding the blanket. He climbed in beside her. His driver, distraught, drove off without a word. In the back of this car driving slowly through the streets of San Francisco, a son had just found his mother. And a mother, whom everyone believed to be dead, had just to be reborn in the arms of one's child. The scene lasted less than 5 minutes. More in an era governed by networks, the image is stronger than 1,000 speeches. A teenager, sitting on a bench not far from the convenience store, had filmed the entire encounter on his phone. His video, blurry but moving, captured every movement, the billionaire in a suit, falling to his knees in front of a homeless woman. The raw, irrepressible emotion. The woman's trembling hands, the tears, the embrace. The caption added by the young man. Carter Tech CEO reunites with his mother, who has been homeless for 30 years. The world is in tears. In a few hours, the video exploded on social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Millions of views. Journalists seized on it, comments poured in by the hundreds of thousands. Hashtags #Ezekiel Carter, #Martha Estvivante, #One Mother One Son rose to global trend. People wanted to understand. They wanted to know who was this woman. And above all, how could a Silicon Valley giant have grown up separated from his mother, on the street? The day after, media attention was at its peak. An emergency press conference was called at Carter Tech headquarters. All major media outlets were present: CNN, NBC, Le Monde, The Guardian, NHK. El Paste Glass Auditorium was packed. When the doors opened, the silence was immediate. Ezekiel Carter appeared, dressed in a no-nonsense charcoal gray suit, without a flashy watch, without any outward sign of wealth. But what caught the eye was the woman on his arm. Martha. She wore a simple, midnight blue suit and comfortable shoes. Her gray hair was combed back. Her face, even marked by years of poverty, radiated a new strength, that of regained dignity. Ezekiel escorted him to the lectern. He wasn't speaking yet. He was looking around the room. The flashbulbs were popping. Reporters were holding their breath. Then he spoke, calmly. "Thank you for being here. I don't usually talk about my private life. But today, I owe it to her." He slowly turned his head towards Martha. "This woman's name is Martha Williams. She was born here in San Francisco. She raised me alone for the first 6 years of my life. She taught me to read, to dream, to be a man who stands up. She gave me everything, without ever receiving anything." A murmur of emotion went through the room. "When I was 6, she was hospitalized after a seizure of exhaustion. Powerful people, my father, among others, took advantage of his vulnerability to take me away from him. She was never able to find me. And I never knew what was done to him. She was declared mentally unstable. Abandoned. Betrayed. She fell into oblivion. In the street. While I grew up in comfort, with an emptiness that nothing could fill." Ezekiel straightened slightly, and his voice became firmer. "Yesterday, fate, or divine justice, call it what you will, brought me back to her. I found her again. And looking into her eyes, I found me truth." There was a moment of silence. The whole room held its breath. This woman, whom so many of you would have passed by without even giving her a glance, is me mother. She is Alchemy Base. If I am who I am today, if I built this company with human values, if I refuse to give in to greed and corruption, it's because I grew up with the echo of his lullabies in my head. Because even separated from her, I always knew that one day, I would have to make her proud. A shudder ran through the room. Today I want fix what can be. Rehabilitate his name. Honor his fight. And say loud and clear that success means nothing if she forgets where she comes from. My first act will be to create a foundation in her name. A foundation for invisible women. Those who are abandoned, silenced, and buried alive. It will be called Martha Hope Foundation. Martha, by his side, wept silently. Her gaze was lost between pride, old pain, and the relief that only rediscovered love can offer. And in that suspended moment, it was no longer a CEO who was speaking. It was a son who did justice to his mother. After the press conference, while the world was talking about them as a modern miracle, Ezekiel did what no camera recorded. He took care of his mother, with the patience, delicacy, and respect of a son who had lived his whole life waiting for this moment. He installed it in a discreet but sumptuous property, nestled on the seafront, a few kilometers north of San Francisco. The house, built of pale stone, overlooked a gentle cliff where the waves lapped silently. Large bay windows opened up the view of the horizon. The light entered like a blessing. Inside, every detail had been thought out to offer Martha peace, comfort and dignity. A full medical team watched over her with kindness. A small reading room, bathed in natural light, was entirely dedicated to her, filled with novels, poetry, philosophy, and even children's picture books that she sometimes leafed through silently, a tear in the corner of her eye. But it is the garden, vast and carefully maintained, which became son refuge. Old roses, jasmine, lavender along the border, and a white-painted wooden bench beneath a century-old oak tree. Every morning, she would go down there, wrapped in a woolen shawl, notebook in hand, and look out at the sea. Sometimes she would write, sometimes she would just breathe. But she lived. Again. Ezekiel, true to his words, did not stop at symbolic gestures. A few weeks after the conference, he officially launched the Foundation Martha Hope, a non-profit organization with a simple but ambitious mission: give a chance to women broken by life. The foundation proposed: secure shelters for homeless women victims of violence, mental health and reconstruction programs, identity training grants, a network of partner companies ready to hire, and above all, a legal platform dedicated to the reopening of old files for women unfairly interned, condemned or deprived of their rights. The impact was immediate. Thousands of testimonies poured in. Women recounted, for the first time, what had been stolen from them: their children, their homes, their voices. And everywhere, Martha's name became a symbol of silent resistance. Ezekiel did not forget the original injustice, the one who destroyed her mother's life. With the help of renowned lawyers and experts in legal archiving, he made officially reopen the Martha Williams case. He presented overwhelming evidence: falsified letters, manipulated diagnoses, political pressure. The name of Robert Williams, his biological father, was publicly quoted. An internal investigation within the bar was launched. Investigative journalists unearthed similar cases in which Robert allegedly used his power to silence or oust vulnerable women. His image as a respectable man was shattered. And above all, Martha's name was rehabilitated. A civil ceremony, presided over by the mayor of San Francisco herself, formalized this recognition. A certificate of rehabilitation was presented to him. Standing in the front row of the room, Ezekiel applauded him, his eyes brimming with tears. "I was erased," Martha said that day. "And today, thanks to my son, I exist again." A year after their reunion, Martha was no longer a shadow on the street, more a voice listened to. She was invited to give lectures in universities, social institutions, even in front of young recruits of the municipal police. She spoke softly, without anger, but with a sharp lucidity. She told her story, not to accuse, but to enlighten. Then she wrote a book, What the Street Taught Me, a moving account of her life, between light and night, silence and memory. The book became a bestseller. Women from all over the world recognized their own wounds in it. Whenever she was asked about Ezekiel, about her son who became one of the most influential men in the world, she always answered the same thing, with a gentle smile and shining eyes. "My son is not a millionaire. He is my miracle." Years had passed since the day Ezekiel had found his mother on that Tenderloin sidewalk. The world had changed, and so had he. Under his leadership, Carter Tech had become much more than a technology company. It was a model of ethics, responsible innovation, and humanity in action. The company funded hospitals, schools, and shelters. It refused military contracts, advocated for algorithmic transparency, and trained thousands of young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods each year. Ezekiel, however, remained true to his image: discreet, profound, and almost elusive. Despite the hundreds of awards, the invitations to Davos, the photos with heads of state, he remained a man driven by a single loyalty, that of memory. His office, on the top floor of the headquarters of Carter Tech, overlooked the entire San Francisco Bay Area. It was a simple room, bathed in natural light, with white walls and raw wood furniture. No ostentatious luxury, no abstract art, and no flashy trophies. On the shelves, a few books. On the desk, a leather notebook, an antique pen, a glass hourglass. But what struck the visitors was the wall opposite the desk. He was not. No Stanford degree, yet graduated with highest honors. No photo with the president, no Forbes certificate. Not even the company logo. Just one photo. Only one. In black and white. That of a young black woman, with dark circles under her eyes but full of love, sitting on a modest chair, holding a sleeping little boy against her. The photograph, yellowed by time, had been found at the bottom of a box that Martha still kept, long after her reinstallation. Ezekiel had the photo restored, framed it with anti-reflective glass, and had suspended it like a silent altar. Everyone who entered this office understood, without a word, that this cliché was more important than anything he had accomplished. One winter morning, on the occasion of Carter Tech's 20th anniversary, Ezekiel held a private ceremony with his longest-serving employees. No cameras, no pompous speeches. In the center of the main hall, between two glass and steel pillars, a white marble slab, sober and discreet. It had been hand-polished by a local craftsman. No logo. Just an inscription, engraved in fine letters. To the one who gave me everything, when she had nothing. You are my origin, my pride, my truth. Ezekiel. A respectful silence reigned all around. Some shed discreet tears. Others closed their eyes. This moment, more than all the industry's trophies, became Blade the Carter Tech. The plaque was dedicated to Martha. But she was actually talking to all the mothers of the world that we had forgotten, sacrificed, or erased from success stories. Martha didn't see the plaque with her own eyes. She had died peacefully 2 years earlier, in her house facing the sea, one spring morning, with Ezekiel at her bedside, holding her hand. Before leaving, she smiled and whispered, "I can go in peace. I found you. You lived. You loved. And you saved me." His funeral was simple, intimate, without great ceremony. But thousands of messages poured in from all over the world. Women, orphans, formerly homeless people, students helped by the foundation. They all wrote, "Thank you, Martha. Thank you for this son. Thank you for your courage." Sometimes Ezekiel would sit alone in his study, staring at the photograph. He remembered the voice, the songs, the emptiness, the anger, the miracle. And he knew that its success would never be measured in billions or innovations. But in this. To have given back to his mother what the world had stolen from her. To have engraved his name in stone. Having built an empire not for him, more for her.